As a Christian book coach, I help a lot of Christian writers write and self publish their very first nonfiction book. I also help a lot of authors who have already either self published or worked with a third party company to publish a book. And they come to me because they're really frustrated with the results or their experience. And they want help to get their book out there into the hands of the readers that like they intended. And so that is what has led me to create this particular episode of the Ink and Impact podcast, because it all comes down to three main questions that every Christian author should be ready to answer. And so that is what we are going to discuss on today's episode. All right. So the very first thing that I want you as a Christian writer who is gearing up to either start writing their manuscript or getting ready to self-publish or wants to create a second edition and republish a book, I want you to ask yourself this very first fundamental question. And that is, what exactly is your book about? I know I'm probably getting eye rolls and sighs from you because you have heard this before. Yes, you have heard this before, but I want you to really, really understand what this question is getting at. Okay. This is getting at the theme of your book. A lot of times I'm working with clients and they want to write their life story. Great. What is the running theme about your life story? What is it about? Other times, clients are wanting to write a business book or a book about leadership. Okay, perfect. What kind of leadership? What kind of business book? Those are very open-ended categories, right? And that's what they are. They're categories. You want to drill down to get to the running theme of your book. Sometimes when I'm working with clients, it's easy for me as an outsider, easier to see the theme than it is when you are just going through all kinds of materials or memories, as the case may be, and you might not see it right away. But I want you to really think about it, really look through your material. And I want you to come up with an author elevator pitch. If you have never worked in the business world, an elevator pitch is where you share what you do in about 30 seconds to a minute, the length of a typical elevator ride. So this has been around for a long time, and the expression came from whenever people were working in high power cities like New York City or Chicago or LA, and somebody in the corporate world was just starting out in the company and they might get in the elevator with someone higher up in the company, right? And they want to really showcase what they can bring to the company, so that in the hopes that they might be remembered by the executive or by the manager, and they might be considered for promotions, right? And so they want to have some very quick way of sharing what they do and how they do it, right? So I want you to think about that as an author. If you were in an elevator with your ideal reader, what is your book about? Can you tell them very succinctly in 30 seconds or less? Many times when I meet with my clients for the first time during our first session, I will ask them, what is your book about? And I sit back and I let them speak. And many, many times they keep going and keep going and keep going. And it's just this very broad discussion of what all their book encompasses. And that is where we need to get more focused. Okay. You don't want the listener's face and eyes to glaze over right? Because you're just going on and on and on. And yet you also don't want it to be so short, like I said, life story, or I'm writing a business book. Those are too short because then the person listening will be like, oh, okay, there's nothing unique about that. I don't care. You want to have some specificity and keep it in a very concise manner. Last year and a half ago, I had created a marketing group for authors and we worked on elevator pitches. And so that's something that I feel that each of the members really benefited from and got them to thinking more succinctly about what they are writing about, because that's going to help you in your writing. Believe it or not, that is really going to help you with the writing of the manuscript. And you need to start there. So create your little elevator pitch about what your book is about. And I want it to carry over into the book's title and subtitle. Okay. I know there are, especially if you're writing fiction, you can have a very general or even overly specific title, right? But when you're writing nonfiction, it needs to be clear from the outset exactly what the book is about to capture the potential reader's interest, right? There are all kinds of books on a bookshelf in a brick and mortar store. There are even more books on online retailers. So you need to be able to stand out from the masses with your title. Okay. That's going to be the title and the cover art are going to be the two things that your reader is going to look at first. They're not going to take the time to read the summary or the back cover copy if the title and the cover art don't reflect what your book is about. Okay. For example, when I wrote my first book of my own for myself, because I do write bespoke books as a co author with clients, but for my own book, I was wanting to help retirees specifically write their life stories. So I decided to write a book with writing prompts. So what did I title it? I titled it The 1 Year Collection of Weekly Writing Prompts. And the subtitle is Write Your Life Story One Question at a Time. People know at a glance exactly what the book is about. It's going to help them write their life story in a year or less using writing prompts. Okay. Just one question a week, right? Then there's the cover art. So here's an image. If you are on YouTube, you can see this image right here. This is the cover art. It obviously has a pen there. There's a piece of paper. You can tell that this is a book to help people write. Okay. So your book needs to do something similar for whatever you are writing about. That leads us into question number 2 that every Christian author should be ready to answer. And that is, how is your book relevant to your ideal reader? So, what do I mean by this? Yes, we've already gotten clear on what we're writing about, but is that what our readers want to learn about or be encouraged by? Is it going to encourage them? How do we know? And who exactly are our ideal readers? Do we know that? So, this is where you're going to get into the purpose of your book. So, what your book is about was the theme. How your book is relevant to your ideal readers is the purpose. You want to make an impact on your readers and you want to make an impact on specific readers. And again, when people first come to me as a book coach, I'll ask them, who are your ideal readers? And they'll be, it's going to be for men and women of all ages, everywhere in the world. And they just keep going on and they just cast this very large, wide net. Okay. And I want you to think the opposite way, get more specific. Focus on who exactly is going to benefit from your book. If you're writing your life story, are you wanting to create it for particular people? For example, a lot of my bespoke life story clients are wanting to privately publish the book. They don't want it for sale in any retailer because they want it just for their family and close friends. Okay. So they're going to share different types of content they wouldn't necessarily want to share with the wider world, right? It helps them concentrate on what they're going to share and they know what their family members and next generations will want and need to learn about them. Okay. If you are writing a book about, I don't know, deep sea fishing, right? Are you writing about people who are just wanting to go out and charter a fishing trip for one time only? Or are you writing a book for those who are in tournaments and really make a significant investment in the sport? Knowing who your ideal readers are is going to affect what content you're going to write about and how you're going to market, what avenues you're going to use to market to them, and so forth. So hopefully that is clear about why it's important to understand who your ideal readers are. But you also, before your book is published, you want to make sure you're already speaking with your ideal readers to get even more input and more ideas about how to connect with them and what information they are looking for. Maybe it's not even information. Maybe they're looking for encouragement, or maybe they're looking for formulas and templates and things like that. So you can find all of that out. How? By interacting with them. Okay. This is where email lists are really helpful. This is where having a community of some sort, whether it's an in-person community related to what your book topic is about, whether it is online, there are endless possibilities of how you can connect with your ideal readers. But the goal and the key factor is to connect with them. Okay. And then once you connect with them, whether it's your email list or in person, you want to survey them. What are they looking for? What are they struggling with? What do they wish was out in the market that they can't find and they want that information, right? Make sure you're capturing that key critical research and act on it, implement it, start meeting their needs. Okay. And this also how you, when you start interacting with these people, that's how you find beta readers. And a lot of first time authors, especially self published authors, skip this step because sometimes they don't even know about it. If they've not been in the publishing world and it's their first book, they don't even know what beta readers are. So if that is you, let me just explain that a beta reader is not a whole big group of people, but beta readers are just a handful of select readers, advanced readers, that you either give the full manuscript that you have written thus far. If you do that, I highly recommend that you do watermarks and make sure copyright symbols on every page, all of that. Or you can give select chapters to certain people to get their feedback. Is what you're sharing landing with them? Is it resonating with them? Do they come back with you with, yeah, that was good because they're being nice? Or are they coming back with, this was fantastic. When you said X, Y, and Z, I could imagine myself in there, or I can resonate with that so much. That has happened to me. And what kind of feedback are you receiving from these early readers? Pay attention to that and then ask questions. You don't want to ask 100 questions. You don't want to overwhelm them. You want to make it easy for them to respond to you. Okay. So just ask, what was your favorite part about this chapter or this book? What do you think could use some improvement? And tell them to be honest. And I want you then to not harbor any resentment when they provide honest feedback. Okay, this is where we need to deflect pride and just take on whatever they are saying, not take on, but receive whatever they're saying and filter it. If it's useful, if there's a nugget of truth there, then pay attention to it. If it's not, discard it. Okay. But receive the feedback. Okay. And you want to make sure that you do this and allow enough time for you to make revisions based on some of their feedback. Again, don't use all of their feedback. They are not qualified editors. Remember that. They're just your ideal readers. So what if there's a consensus between the 3 to 5 beta readers? I don't really recommend that you have more than 5. But if there's consensus about certain parts of the book that are causes them to question, have lots of questions, or maybe they don't understand it, or on the opposite end, they're all raving about that particular section, to keep that and maybe write more along those lines in your book. Okay. I hope that's all making sense, right? And I just want to interject here that if anything that I ever say on any of these episodes of the podcast are resonating with you, or you have questions about it, it doesn't make sense, or something I didn't explain it clearly, use the feedback, like that fan mail that's available. I know that my podcast host, Buzzsprout, offers fan mail. So you can just click the link in the description and leave me a message and let me know. And I'd be happy to follow up in a future episode and clarify. Or, of course, I always welcome any feedback that you provide, good or bad. So please feel free to use that fan mail feature. Okay, back to what we're talking about. So the first 2 questions that every author, every Christian author should ask is, what exactly is your book about? And how is your book relevant to your ideal readers? Okay, so now we're moving into question number 3. And I personally feel this is the most important question, especially as Christian authors. And that is, are you working with God and for his glory? Or are you putting him to the side and working for your personal gain? And I'm just going to pause there. And I want you to be honest, because I know for myself, it's very easy to get caught up in all the doing and the busy work that we unintentionally push him to the side. And suddenly we're so busy that we're not necessarily getting into his word every day. We're not necessarily inviting him into our writing sessions. We're not necessarily even writing about him in the manuscript. Okay. And so I want us to pause regularly and just do a little self-analysis. How invested am I in my time with the Lord? And am I inviting him into my author journey? Am I seeking his wisdom and his counsel? Am I putting him first? Okay. We all need to remember to do that. Okay. And this goes into the motivation. Why are we writing the book? My guess is if we're Christian authors, our intention is to write to make a kingdom impact in the lives of our ideal readers, right? But how can we make a kingdom impact if we aren't incorporating his scripture, biblical truths, our testimony of how Christ has worked in us, through us, and the hope and grace and mercy that's available to everyone who believes, right? How can we expect others to know about that if we aren't sharing about it? Okay. And I'm not just talking about in the manuscript itself, although that is important, but in how we are presenting our material, and ourselves as authors, in our marketing, in all aspects of our author journeys. Okay. I wanted to just encourage us with a couple of verses that really stood out to me as I was preparing for this episode. And the first is Colossians 2:8. Remember how I said it's so easy for us to get so caught up in all the learning and all the exciting tools that are out there to help us, but they all have learning curves. And so then we watch tutorials, and I get it, because I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn. And it's so easy to get just really caught up in learning new things. But I want us to remember Colossians 2, verse 8. See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the basic principles of the world rather than on Christ. So let's just remember that. Maybe write that verse on a card, keep it handy, memorize that one, right? And the other verse I want to leave us with today is 2 Timothy. We all love 2 Timothy, don't we? And I specifically want to share from 2 Timothy chapter 1, verses 7 through 8a. And I'm reading from the NIV, by the way, today. Verse 7 of chapter 1. For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline. Verse 8. So do not be ashamed to testify about our Lord. Okay. I hope that we take that to heart and that that the Holy Spirit just revives us in our author journeys and in our books, in our marketing, as we're talking with people, as we're learning, right? I just want us to make sure that we put God in his rightful place as sovereign Lord, as a compassionate Father who wants us to just step out in faith and obedience to what he has placed. He has placed a calling on our hearts to write these books. I believe that he has readers waiting for our books, but we just need to take faithful steps of obedience to get it out into the world. Okay. So in conclusion, I want to recap the 3 questions. What exactly is your book about? How is your book relevant to your ideal readers? And are you working with God and for his glory? Okay. So I don't want to leave you hanging all by yourself. If you have any questions at all about anything that I shared today, I want you to leave me fan mail, right? As I mentioned previously. I want to also invite you to join me in my new Publish with Purpose Substack community. And so that is where I am going to start providing more of the industry updates. There were some things that I thought about sharing here on today's podcast episode, and it would just make things too long. So I thought, oh, the new Substack community, Publish with Purpose, would be a great place to share that. So I'm going to share some of those industry updates, things that are going on in the publishing world that are relevant to you as a writer, especially as a Christian author. And I'm going to start having some live Q&A sessions. Again, your fan mail feedback will provide some great ideas for what I should talk about first. So feel free to share that as well. And opportunities for you to interact with fellow Christian writers. You know, I've shared before how here on the podcast, I don't typically get to interact with you. And I would love to create a place that we can interact. And I have had a Facebook group, right? And that hasn't really gone all that great because I'm just not that into Facebook. I'm sorry. And I know that more and more people are leaving Facebook, more and more writers, and more writers are heading over to Substack. So I want to invite you to join me over at Substack. You can follow me on my personal feed, Dalene Bickel, or you can join the community of Publish with Purpose. And finally, if you are looking for one-on-one help to iron out any of the things that I talked about today, whether it's your theme or your purpose or your motivation or anything else, know that I'm here to help you as your book coach. Feel free to head on over to dalenebickel.com/coaching to schedule your coaching session. I would love to be able to assist you in your writing journey. All right, that's it for now, friends. Until next time, God bless.